Hi, I'm Jen, and I once knocked my sister unconscious trying to summon Beetlejuice. Quick reminder here at the top that this is an inclusive space where Black Lives Matter and we are anti-Asian hate. That means that you are safe here, in the video with me, and in the comments below, where no hate speech of any kind will be tolerated. If there's any way to make our videos more accessible or inclusive, please let us know by leaving a comment or sending me an email. Alright, so it is Preptober vlog number 2. And today we're going to talk about working on multiple projects at the same time. November starts in like 15 days, 14 days, something like that. And I have done very little actual prep work on the novel this month. What I have been doing is working on other projects, getting things off my plate, and making sure that I am ready to go come November 1st. In last week's vlog, you can see I talk about putting the prep in Preptober, getting meal plans ready, and things like that. This week, I'm going to talk about other projects that have deadlines that are really close to November and making sure that they don't completely eclipse working on your project for NaNoWriMo. This week, a lot of my vlogging was computer screens, but I kicked it off with a really fantastic procrastination project. Number 1, finishing up the episodes of Riverdale that I had fallen behind on because that genuinely was bothering me. And number 2, I got these shelves at the Target dollar spot, and they're kind of plain. They're just little wooden shelves. I think they were $3 or $5. So I took most of Sunday to do This is the shelves that I got at the Target dollar spot. I painted it black and sparkly and then put rhinestones around the frame and little fuzzy chickens on the top. I was thinking I would use that to sort of like put mini brands on, but most of my mini brands are out in the shed. And also I have a ton of post-it notes that I'm using and index cards to organize my project for November. So that's how that became my post-it note shelf. There were some other life things that popped up this week as well. Quick medical update. I have recently found out that I have a genetic mutation. It's called BRCA1, BRCA1. And it means that I am very high risk for breast cancer and ovarian cancer. It does not mean that I have them, but it means that I am at a more than 60% chance lifetime risk for both of those things. Without turning this into a big medical explanation of what's going on, basically I've had a bunch of doctor's appointments recently, and I'm probably going to have to get some preventative surgery done in the next couple of years. I don't really know how to talk about it, but regardless of your biological sex, breast cancer can affect everyone at a much higher percentage than I even thought, and I have it in my family, so it's always been on my radar, kind of a concern of mine. If you have never thought about it before, maybe find out what your risk factors are and just make sure that you are getting the proper screening done. I had one of my doctor's appointments for that this week and one last week, and that kind of shifted around some of our life planning stuff. That has nothing to do with all of these books over here. That was a fun little extra surprise where my bookcase broke this weekend. No matter how well you plan for Preptober, things will pop up and stuff will get in the way. That is all kind of a roundabout way of explaining that I was kind of stressed out this past weekend, and that's how I ended up adding a bunch of rhinestones and fuzzy chickens to a tiny shelf. Not that I needed an excuse, but that's what happened. Looping back around to working on multiple projects before NaNoWriMo. This week, I worked on my paper proposal for the Peter Pan paper. Say that 11 times fast. I put together my bibliography and I did some further research about maybe more primary sources that I should have on my list or at least be aware of. And then I poked around on academia.edu looking for papers that have already been written about the subject and about Peter Pan in queer communities, which is what I want my presentation to be about. Next year's International Conference for the Fantastic in the Arts is about fantastic communities and how the fantastic applies in real world communities. They accept papers that are not on the theme of the conference itself, but I find that making your paper proposal fits in with that theme generally gets better engagement because that's what people are there to talk about. So that is the paper that I am working on this time around. I love Peter Pan, and I haven't read any adaptations in a really long time, so this has been a really fun project to work on. The deadline for that proposal is October 31st, so I actually started on that back in August, and I've kind of slowly been making my way through my Peter Pan related TBR so that I would be ready to get that abstract out. It's not taking a ton of energy, and I like reading fiction before bed anyway, so that's what I have stuck to for my reading list. The other project that I'm working that is taking up the bulk of my energy and time right now is the Fake Relationships novella. That is due on November 12th, but Paperbacks & Co. had another critique circle deadline on October 15th, so I made sure that there was at least a couple of scenes done and a full outline for the length of the novella so that I could submit it to Critique Circle and get some feedback from some ladies that I work with on a weekly basis and really trust to look at my work this early on in the process. The other major project is that I got the queer romance novella back from my editor, and I don't know exactly what the deadline is on that one, but I'm working on going through her comments on that as well in between everything else. And perhaps most pressing, well, definitely most pressing because it has the soonest deadline. Well, by the time you watch this, it will have already happened. But this weekend, I am going to the Maryland Writers Association to do my presentation on sitcom pilots and character creation. Okay, Jen, how do you balance all of that and getting ready for NaNoWriMo? I will tell you. Thank you so much for asking. You're always asking such good questions. I really appreciate that. None of these projects directly relate to my NaNoWriMo, which is working on a coming-of-age fantasy, hopefully the first book in a series, different than everything else that I'm working on. Not super, but it is not the same. I am not directly sitting down and planning out the actual project for NaNoWriMo, beat by beat. What I am doing is keeping that project on the back burner. So every time I'm doing research on Peter Pan and how these fantastic characters fit into the queer community, I'm thinking about that as something that I might want to apply to my stories. When I'm researching and putting together my presentation for sitcom pilots and character creation, I'm thinking about different ways that I can convey information about my characters in the NaNoWriMo project. Of course, anytime I'm reading, that is going towards filling the well for my writing as well. So I'm keeping that lens on things as I read, kind of as a secondary or tertiary lens, because what I'm really focusing on is what I'm going to talk about regarding those books and my Peter Pan paper proposal. And then working on the romance novellas, both the queer romance and the fake relationship story, those are just building up my skills as far as story structure and getting to that third act and really building up to the climax of the story that I really feel is one of my weakest parts still. So continuing to research story structure. I also took a class with Francesca Leah Block this weekend about story structure, and that class really reiterated a lot of the stuff that I've been reading about and working on in my editing and writing of other novella-length stories. Setting up my Kanban board and my planner for the whole quarter was actually massively helpful, and using my Kanban board in earnest this quarter has really changed the way that I've been able to organize my tasks. It means that I can look at what I want to get done just this week and pick those tasks out of things that I've already put on this board. And you can see I'm already building up a nice little pile of done post-it notes. So making sure that I know what the deadlines are for all of these projects and how long they're going to take me has been super helpful. Editing the queer romance novella is taking a lot of energy. It takes me about 25 minutes to get through like 7 pages-ish. So I know that that's not something I can expect to get done all at once. And I set aside an hour or two to make some progress and then come back to it the next day. The Peter Pan paper proposal is another project like that, where I know I'm not going to be able to sit down and read 7 books at once. I'm not going to have a full thesis fleshed out and ready to go within an hour. So I set aside chunks of time, I work on it, I have a very specific goal. finish my bibliography. Just read this one book that I'm focusing on right now and then move on. So using the Kanban board to break things down into smaller tasks, knowing how long those tasks take me, and then keeping them organized in a calendar based on deadline has all been massively helpful. And knowing what I'm going to work on during NaNoWriMo has made it easier for me to relate those projects back to the fantasy novel that I'm going to want to write come November 1st. This week on Advice Jen Can Dish Out, and also this week kind of actually took, when you have major stuff going on in your life, cut yourself a break. Build a sparkly set of shelves and watch a bunch of Riverdale and just like give yourself the afternoon off. I feel like that's probably advice I've said before, and I probably say that every time, and now we're just caught in a time loop, but this week kind of sucked. And I knew that I was going to be not only stressed out about my doctor's appointments, but it was also going to be coming home, processing the information I got, deciding with my partner what we were going to move forward with regarding what our options were. And so I had to cut myself a little bit of slack, and I had to recognize that that was a lot to have inside my brain. I still hit most of my goals for the week. I don't know that I would have done that if I hadn't given myself a break. So this is advice that is finally settling into my thickety thick skull. And I hope that it settles into yours sooner than it did mine. That is all I've got for week 2 of Preptober. Week 3 is going to be kind of funky because after I go to the conference, I'm going to be quarantining in my sister's basement. So hopefully I'll be able to make some progress on creating a series Bible, because I do want this fantasy book to be the first in a series, and finishing up some books for book clubs that are coming up. Those are my 2 major projects, I think, unless I'm forgetting something. Working on the fake relationship story. I'm really looking forward to having some time away from my house, but I know I'm gonna miss my babies. So thank you guys for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel to make sure that you are here for all of the awesome content that's coming out, and ring the bell wherever it is to make sure that you're notified every time there's a new video. Remember that during October and November, there will be weekly vlog updates going up, and while there were semi-weekly videos going up on Patreon as well, that's going to be on hold for the month of November. Today's Patreon exclusive is a deep dive about different free digital resources that are available to help you create the right ambiance while you are getting into the writing groove. That is going to be super helpful for the month of November, so if you're not a patron already, you can head on over to patreon.com/Writewithapendragon and become one today. That's all I've got for today, guys. As always, stay safe and stay healthy. I'll see you again next week. Bye.
Are you always this articulate?
Hercules. My name is Hercules.